Today, we are going to look at Revit and how it just kind of operates, the comparisons between it and AutoCAD, as well as SketchUp too, and just kind of how you can access it and download it. So there is no assignment associated with Revit for today. It's just going to be a look at how the software works and the kind of quirks and differences between this and the other software we've used. One of the main issues that students face right off the bat is that Revit is a Windows only software. So there is no version available if you are on a Mac. There are some ways that you're going to be able to access it with a MacBook that we'll go over today, but just kind of as a heads up. So for today, really your kind of end goal slash deliverable of sorts is that you've either downloaded and installed Revit on your computer, or you have decided how you are going to access it, whether it be through just downloading it yourself or through Udesk, Parallels, Bootcamp, going to the computer labs in Catherine Harper Hall, kind of however you feel most comfortable using the software. Um, so first off then is if you are going to download it onto your own Windows computer, you'll do it the same way that you downloaded AutoCAD. So that is just search for Autodesk Student Download, log in to your student account, and you have access to all of these various software for free up until you have to renew. So for me, that's October 28th. I'll have to come in back into their website and just confirm still that I work in the field of education, or for you that you still are a student, and then they'll let you access their software for an additional year. So you do have to do that every single year, prove that you're a student. Um, and then we have Revit. So we can see that Revit is Windows only. There are two different options here. You want just plain Revit, not Revit Generative Design. Um, and you'll click on your Get License. You'll want the 2021 version of Revit, and then you'll go through the process of downloading it. It is a fairly hefty software, so it will take some time to download and install. And we'll also just look at some of the requirements for it as well, because this does a lot more than AutoCAD, and um, yeah, just kind of needs a lot more than what AutoCAD does, since we're dealing with three-dimensional design with BIM versus 2D AutoCAD. Um, the computer requirements are also a little bit more. So the minimum requirements is 8 gigabytes of RAM, which many computers have already. Um, it will still technically install on something that has less. So if your laptop only has 4 gigabytes of RAM, the software will still install. It's just going to run kind of slower. Um, I personally would recommend even more than 8. So as I talked about when I first kind of did that little skit about computers, I would recommend somewhere around 16 gigabytes of RAM on a computer for doing ideal CAD work. Or of course you could get more. So if you had 32 or 64, it would run things even faster. After that, in my opinion, I think after 32 gigs, you're just kind of throwing your money away. Um, but that's just my opinion on the matter. Um, to also use something for your CPU, like an Intel Xeon, I believe that's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure. That's what I have installed on my computer, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. Or like an i7 or an i9. Again, it'll install if you have like an i5 on your computer, but it just won't run really ideally. And the way you can also check on that too is if you go into your system, which actually, hold on, no, wrong thing, sorry. Yeah, so if you click on like your Windows icon and you go into your settings, which whoops, my thing disappeared. Settings, system, and then if you scroll all the way down to about, it'll tell you things like what type of CPU, what your processor is, how much RAM you have, things like that you can find in there. Um, Video display and things, really, that's not, do it on whatever display you've got. Don't go buy a new computer just for Revit. Um, Disk space is huge. So like I said, it is a pretty beefy program. So it's going to take up 30 gigabytes of space on your computer. So you may need to, think about what you have installed and move some things around if need be. And that's also why it sometimes takes a little bit longer to install Revit than some other software, is just because it is a pretty big piece of software. It's not necessarily Call of Duty or anything, but it's still a pretty big software. Um, Now, for those of you who either just really think that your computer would not perform well for Revit, or you don't have a choice to install it because you're on a Mac, then your option would be Udesk. And so I think they've worked out some of the kinks of Udesk. There are still some things that they are figuring out because it really wasn't something that anyone had to use until last semester. Um, but to log into Udesk, you'll just do it the same way that you would log into most things. So you'll just click on that. You'll log in using your ASU information, so your ASU email and everything. You may have to go through Duo for it. I can't remember if yes or no. Um, and then you're going to log into the AD, which is the Applied Design and Sustainable Tech GPU, which only you have access to, because I've requested it for. So not every student can access this, but you guys can. And this will essentially log you in remotely, which they want me to log in again. Um, It'll log you remotely onto one of the desktops in the Catherine Harper Hall lab. So you can then work on it on your own laptop and such. Um, and so then you can access Revit right through here. One thing that I found out, and that's kind of interesting here, that this little test file that I was working around with is still on my desktop. So that's from only a few days ago, which it's okay, but eventually they are going to clear this computer. Whoa, that was loud. They are going to clear this computer, and then I'm going to lose this test file. And so what me and the student found as a little workaround is that as you're working in AutoCAD or as you're working in Revit, you can save your files to the desktop, but then while you're in Udesk, go into Chrome, go into your Google Drive, and then either upload the file here to Google Drive or email it to yourself as an attachment. And so that this way, or I'll go file upload, and then I'll just take it directly from my desktop to here. So this way, in case they, or when they inevitably clear the GPU, you don't lose your file along with it. So this is what I found to be the best way to do it, just because for some reason you can't access a flash drive on this, which is kind of poopy and doo-doo. But like I have flash drives currently plugged in, they won't let me put, like I can't access them in here. Don't know why. And I think this personal drive only shows up for teachers. If you do see in this PC, if you see this personal drive, you can also save things there. Um, but I think that only shows up for teachers for some reason. So Udesk is one way to work with Revit. If you do leave, so like if I have this remote desktop here, this tab open, and then I go and I do a bunch of other things, and maybe I'm like watching Netflix, and I've got like my file open here. If you're inactive in this tab for a while, they will log you out. And that's just because the servers at the school need as much available kind of data and memory to function and run for all of the students trying to access it. So if you're sitting there not using it, but still then accessing that memory, they're just going to kick you off. Um, so Don't just leave the tab open and running and thinking that your stuff is going to get saved, because chances are it's not. And I would once again make sure that if you're using Udesk, back all your stuff up onto Google Drive so that way you can still access it. Um, Other options that you have for if you're on a Mac is you could download and install Parallels, which Parallels is very similar to Udesk, so it runs a virtual machine on your computer of Windows. Two kind of negatives of Parallels, in my opinion, is one, it costs money. So I know that they have a student discount too. So let me actually Google Parallel student discount. So 50% off if you're a student. And then I believe it's $80 for the software itself. So does it say anywhere in here how much they're just doing it in general? No. Um, so yeah, it's an $80 software. It'll be $40 per year if you download the student version. Um, the other thing too is though you do have to also buy Windows as an operating system to install into Parallels. So not only are you paying $40 for the software, but then you also have to pay, I think it's $150 to buy Windows. You can pirate it too, but I'm not supposed to encourage you to do things like that. Uh, so you can run it through that, but then you're just paying extra money on top of extra money for something that Udesk can do for free. And then, but Parallels is an option you could use. And then kind of another option you could do on a Mac would be Boot Camp. So with Boot Camp, you can partition your hard drive. Boot Camp is already installed on all Macs. Um, but you can essentially take your hard drive on your computer, split it, and you can designate how much you want for Windows, how much you want for Mac, and you can make it that when you launch your computer, you can launch it into a Windows version or a Mac version. With Boot Camp, you'd also have to purchase the operating system Windows to install it on that Windows version. And from my experience in the past with Boot Camp, and it could have changed because the last time I had a Mac computer that I really like used was maybe in 2008, and I used Boot Camp to partition it so that way I could have a Windows version on part of my computer. And what I found happened was it worked, but instead of having one good MacBook, I just made myself have kind of a cruddy MacBook and a cruddy Windows laptop. So instead of having one decent computer, I just gave myself two blah computers in one package. Um, they could have improved how everything works now and how Windows runs in their boot camp little thing, but personally I just wasn't a fan. And like I said too, with boot camp you would have to purchase Windows or just pirate a serial key for it, but you didn't hear that from me. Um, so both of these options, Parallels and boot camp, would cost money. Using Udesk would be free. Downloading and installing it on your Windows computer would also be free. Um, so those are just some of the ways that you can use Revit if you need to. Or of course you can go to the Catherine Harper Hall. You can go there and just access it in the computer labs. There's two main ones that all students can access. There's one in what I call the basement, but it's technically the first floor. It's just right outside of the elevators on the very bottom floor. There's a computer lab there that's currently operating at half capacity. So that's just every other desk. And please make sure you wipe down the keyboard and mouse after you use it. And then on the top floor of what is technically Kerr Scott Hall, in room 207 or 217, I can't even remember the room number anymore. It's been that long. Um, but all the way on the side where the parking deck is, there's a computer lab there. that is also operating at half capacity, and you can access the computers there. And still, I would just recommend wiping the keyboard and mouse down before and after you use it, because you don't know if the person before you wiped it down, and you would hope they would. Um, and then, without further ado, let's just jump into what is Revit and how does it work. Um, so this is the welcome screen for Revit. It's similar to like the welcome screen for AutoCAD, like this little start screen here for AutoCAD. It's the same thing here for Revit. I actually uninstalled and reinstalled Revit on this computer, so that way it would look as identical to yours as possible. Um, but you'll have any projects you've currently been working on will be here in this little models area. And then we have families. And so these are our house projects. These are little bits and pieces that could go into our houses. So this is where we can like model out furniture or model out trusses and other different things, or components is what we call them in Revit, that we can put into our projects. Typically, I don't model families, only if I have something really, really particular that I need or I deem I need for my project. That's when I'll model a family out. 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to go download one off the internet. Similar to blocks, there are lots of different family files available for Revit coming from different companies or just that other people have modeled. And I'll show you some good websites where you can get those when we get to that part of the course. Um, but we can also start new ones and such, so I can start a new project or a new model. There's different templates I can work with. And if when you go to look at your templates, you don't see any pop up, it's probably because you have to download and install them separately. And I'll leave a link in on As You Learn for how to do that and where to find them and how to install them. Because for a lot of students, the content library doesn't install when they install the software, and I'm not sure why, because anytime I've run an installation, my content library installs fine. So I don't know why they do things differently for teachers than they do students, but that's apparently what they're doing. Um, but we've got some different templates to work from. I usually just work from the architectural template. I can even browse for more. So I'm either working from the architectural one, or this residential one is another one that I'm a big fan of. Um, but before we start a brand new project, I actually just want to look right here at the sample project that they have pre-installed with the software, so we can just kind of see a little bit of how Revit works and what it accomplishes in the end. So there are 4 main areas of the Revit interface that we really need to focus on. First, of course, is our toolbar up at the top, which is extremely similar to our toolbar and how it works in AutoCAD. Next is just our drawing area, which in this case, we're actually in paper space. We're looking at a sheet, and we can see that we're in the title block sheet. But this is where kind of all of our drawing and everything goes down. Also, again, very similar to how AutoCAD functions. What's very different from AutoCAD is on the side we have our properties bar and our project browser. So our properties bar tells us information about whatever we currently have selected. So currently I have this sheet selected, and so it's telling me information and some settings that I could change about like the graphics, the sheet number, the sheet name, lots of different little bits of information in here that change depending on what you have selected. And so we'll see that if I click on this table here, or this schedule, actually isn't going to tell me anything. If I click on this picture, or this viewport rather, it'll give me then different things about just this one particular view. If I click on the title block, it tells me things about this one particular title block. So your property bar changes based on whatever you currently have selected. And that's how we get all of the different settings and the information that I part of BIM, because as I mentioned at the very beginning, Revit is a BIM software. And then I had mentioned at the very, very beginning of this course, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. And so every single everything inside this project has information tagged into it that is going to help us make calculations, create assessments, and everything so much faster than in AutoCAD. Because in AutoCAD, we have all of our line work and we have all of our hatches and we've got all of our dimensions, but AutoCAD doesn't know what any of this is. Okay, according to AutoCAD, this is a line. It's a line, it's a center line, but there's nothing that is related in the piece of software that says this line is designating the fact that this door and this window are in line with each other. There's no information about that. There's a bunch of lines here for the window, and there's a tag here for the window, but the software doesn't know this is a window or an opening in the wall at all. Revit will know that it's a window. It'll know how much that window costs. It'll know the R value of that window, so it can make a calculation about, how much heat is potentially getting lost out of it. So Revit knows so much more stuff. That's why it takes up so much more space on your computer too. Um, and why it runs a little bit slower is because it is just a much more complex and, in my opinion, smarter software than AutoCAD, um, which can also be a con for it, which we'll look at in a moment. So let me just hit escape so I no longer have that title block selected. And so that's our properties bar where we get all that itty gritty information. And then we have our project browser, which is how we go to all of our different views. And so they're split into different kind of categories. So we have our plan views. And if I just double click like on level 1, I'm now in the level 1 floor plan. And we have 3-dimensional views, which are kind of just perspectives or renderings pre-done. So if I double click on any of these, and we'll just let it load a little bit. And of course, it's not responding already. There's no way I've already made it do too much. It could be because I have all of these things in AutoCAD open. So I'm just going to X out of AutoCAD. I might have to control panel it. Boop. No. Boom. There we go. It's just probably I had a little bit too much open and then OBS on top of it. But we've got 3D views, so these are different perspective shots, renderings that are pre-done based on all we do is place a camera, say where we want the camera to go. And because I have every single thing in here detailed, so even then, like I click on this, it says that it's a wine bottle. I click on this, it tells me that it's a light, and then I can even see how much light I'd be getting from it in the properties bar. So I can even calculate how much energy is this light using, how much space is it covering based on what type of light bulbs I put in it. I could click on the counter or even like the dishwasher in there, and I can see, okay, this is the model of the dishwasher. Like you can get so many specifics in Revit that it's so just cool. That's really the thing that I can't find a better word for you other than that. It's just so cool. So we've got all of these different 3D views that we can access. We've got elevation views, again, that we can access. So that's just clicking on them anywhere in the project browser, just double clicking lets you go to your view. And it'll track the different views you have open up here as well. And so this resets when you close out of the software and come back into it. But I could switch between different views up here. I particularly just usually switch over here in the project browser, just because when I first started using Revit, it didn't track these up here, so I didn't get used to it. Section views for building sections, for wall sections, for different details. Renderings, which is then taking these 3D views and making them into even more realistic looking perspective drawings that then could be brought into software like Photoshop to even further kind of render off and make into kind of nice presentation drawings that we just there's no way I could get this in AutoCAD. And it's just really, really cool. Um, so the other incredibly cool thing about um, Revit is in the 3D views, this little 3D right here, written in those little squiggly brackets. I don't know their exact name. So you can access it through that right there, or this quick shortcut up here of just a little isometric house will bring up a 3D model of your building. And so your scroll wheel can zoom you in and out. Holding down your scroll wheel allows you to pan or move around without changing your view. But then what gets extra cool is holding down the shift key and the scroll wheel allows you to orbit around three-dimensionally. And so you could look around your building or your site three-dimensionally, and everything in this 3D model of the building is linked between all of these drawings. So if I, for instance, go into the first floor plan and I take these tables here and I delete them. And so I'm just clicking on them and hitting the delete key. I'm just going to get rid of everything just for dramatic effect. If I get rid of them in the floor plan, they're gone in the 3D view. If I get rid of it in the 3D view, so if I just click on this curtain wall, this glass wall, and delete it, it's giving me an uh-oh saying, hey, you just got rid of a wall and now your room isn't enclosed. But if I go into the floor plan, that wall is gone. If I go into an elevation view, and so I'll go into the south view, and I take this window and I get rid of it, since that's on the second floor, I'll go into the level 2 floor plan, and where was that? I think that was on this side. Let me Control Z to undo. Yeah. So that was this window right here. If I get rid of it in the floor plan, it gets rid of it in the elevation. It gets rid of it in the 3D model. It gets rid of it everywhere. So if I don't want that window there anymore, it's gone. And so Revit makes it so much easier kind of to create all of your plans because Revit knows what you're doing as an architectural model and it knows that it's a set of plans. So since it is smarter because of that, everything's linked together. It knows the standard of what a window is supposed to look like in a floor plan. It knows the standard of what doors are supposed to look like. And it knows that if there's a door here in the floor plan, that then when we're looking at the west elevation, there should be a door there. Furthermore, if I make any changes in the floor plan, so let's say I take this window here and I've decided that I actually want it to be further down. So I can just drag it down or I could type in measurements. We'll get into that in a moment. But, or I mean rather like next week, not today. But if I move it in the floor plan view, it'll be moved over in the elevation. And so any changes I make in any of these views, elevation view, 3D view, floor plan view, it doesn't matter. They're all linked together. Now with AutoCAD, it would be really easy for my drawings to get out of sync. So if let's say I was designing that 2-room shed for a client and they decided that they wanted they wanted like the windows to be in different spots, they wanted different size windows, I'd have to change it in the floor plan, I'd have to change it in the elevations, I'd have to change it in the sections. With Revit, because everything is linked together, if I make a change in one place, it changes it everywhere. So if I, in this section view here, if I decide that I just want this fridge just completely removed, gone, and now there's just some empty opening there, if I look at even the 3D view of the kitchen, there's no fridge there anymore. If I hit Control Z, Now our fridge is back, but everything's linked to each other. So this way, there really is no way for your drawings to get out of sync in your 3D model, which is just so fantastic, and it makes work a lot easier. But the downside for Revit is then, of course, there's that learning curve of it's a very complex software, and if you don't know what you're doing, um, it's hard or it's harder to trick than necessarily AutoCAD is. So for me, the benefit of AutoCAD is since AutoCAD doesn't know what I'm doing, it's just putting down lines, circles, and rectangles wherever I told it to. I could trick AutoCAD into doing things a little bit easier. With Revit, Revit knows I'm making a building. And so it's harder for me to trick the software into maybe doing some things that I want it to do if I don't know how to do it. Um, there are so many fantastic websites and other various things out there when it comes for Revit. I'll put, or underneath this like lecture link in As You Learn is a link to one of my favorite YouTube channels for Revit, which is called The Balkan Architect. He's fantastic and knows so much about Revit. And I learned so many little fun little tricks and weird things about it from that channel. And then I'm going to just also show you some of the basic stuff. We'll try to cover it, but we do only have around a month of Revit time. And so there will be more to learn than I will tell you. There's more to learn even than I know. But I really like this software too. It's really cool. I like a lot of CAD software though. So then let's just look at what Revit is like from a basic blank drawing. And again, you don't have to follow along with this at all. You don't have to turn anything in at the end of this lecture. It's just to kind of get you a bit familiar with it. And then next class, we will play around and do some follow along tutorials of Revit. So I'm just going to start a brand new drawing in the architectural template, or a brand new project rather. And so it starts me off then in an empty floor plan. Uh, I've got still all of my different panels up here. There are different toolbars that I can also switch between. We're going to spend the majority of our time here in this architecture toolbar, just because this is where most of our stuff is going to get accomplished. Some things in the structural one, a few things in the view, a couple of things with our site, but like I said, we're going to really stay a lot of our time in the architecture one. So I'm in a floor plan. I know that for two reasons. One, because level 1 floor plan is bolded here in my project browser. Two is that it says there's a floor plan here. The other hint is these little boxes. And so these are elevation view markers for my sheets. So this is then my south, my north, my east and west elevations. They're currently blank, so they currently just have little dashes written in them. And the cool thing is, once I start making a sheet and populating the views on the sheet, these little placeholders automatically get filled in. So you can remember from our practice, we would say, you know, like, oh, this is view 1 on sheet A202. It'll automatically fill that in once I define my sheet names and I start placing views onto the sheets of paper. All of that will get filled in, which once again just makes it so much easier to sync all your drawings and make sure everything's working the way you need it to. But since these are my elevation view markers, I just want to make sure that whatever I'm drawing is inside these 4 views. We of course can move them around if we need to. And so our selection tools work similar to AutoCAD in that I can click directly on something, or I could highlight it with a window or a cross selection. So clicking and dragging to the right gets you that window selection where something has to be entirely inside to get selected. Clicking and dragging to the left gets you the cross selection where it just has to kind of barely touch it. And then I can drag these around. I tend to a lot when I'm working in Revit use the arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of move things around a little bit, to just kind of nudge them one way or another way. Um, I do understand a lot of you guys are on laptops. You may not have a set of arrow keys on your laptop, so you don't have to use them that way, but I just really like using the arrow keys to kind of nudge things around. It's just always what I've done. Not sure why, but that's just what I do. And then just like with AutoCAD, anytime you want to deselect anything, just kind of get yourself back to um, starting a new command or doing a new thing, you just hit the escape key on your keyboard. Sometimes you have to hit it several times. There is no command bar like AutoCAD has. There is like a kind of hint bar right down here. So as like I go into tools and stuff, it'll kind of tell me and give me hints down here, but that's kind of it. Um, Now, how I would place everything in my house would be first I'd have to start with adding in walls. So I'd come up to the wall tool, which is keyboard shortcut WA. Keyboard shortcuts work a lot different in Revit in that every shortcut is 2 letters. And I'll be honest, I do not use keyboard shortcuts in Revit because my brain is too tiny to comprehend memorizing keyboard shortcuts for more than one piece of software. So because I know the keyboard shortcuts for AutoCAD, I do not know them for any other software I teach. So I do not know. I probably should because I could work faster like in Photoshop and Illustrator or Revit or Inventor. I could work faster if I knew my keyboard shortcuts better, but I just don't. Um, but if you want to know all of the keyboard shortcuts, anytime you hover over a tool, it'll give you a preview of what the tool does. And then in those parentheses, it tells you what the keyboard shortcut is. Um, but first, I'll place some walls down. And then in my properties bar, I get information about my wall, as well as different types of walls that I could use. So if I click right here, I get this drop down of different types of walls I could use, and I can even make my own custom walls. So like in AutoCAD, when I had said that every wall is made up of several materials, no wall is just made up of one thing. Um, Revit knows this, and it'll have some ones default done with all of those layers, or like I said, we can make our own custom ones. So I'll just do brick and CMU on stud, why not? And I'll just pick which wall I want, how I want to define my wall. So I could do it based on the center. I could do it based on finishing face or the core face, like to the face of the stud. I could define what I want the lowest part of the wall to be, what I want the highest part of the wall to be, or just in general, how tall I want it to be. There's so many different things in there that I could define, and I could even edit this wall further and define even more things about it. So it has right here, like for this wall, for this brick and CMU on a metal stud, it has how much thermal mass this wall has. So we can then calculate, um, like if I say what my HVAC system is, it can calculate everything for me. It could calculate, how fast we're going to have thermal transfer into the wall. I can calculate the absorbency of those bricks. Like everything is in here. To me, it's so crazy that something like this exists for us. But we're not going to go into the properties too much today. Um, and so I'll just start placing a wall down. So I'll just click where I want the wall to start, move my cursor in the direction I want to go, type the distance I want, enter. Nice thing about Revit is because we're using an imperial template and because it's an architecture software, Revit knows I am thinking feet and inches. So I no longer have to type in those designators. So if I just type in 12, enter, it's going to assume 12 feet before 12 inches, unlike AutoCAD did. If I needed to type in something like, so let's say because it says 41 feet 6 inches on my screen, I'm just going to type in 30 feet 6 inches. So I could just do 30 space 6 enter, and it'll make that 30 foot 6 inches. I could also just move my mouse in general towards whatever length I want it to read, and once it says what I want on that, I can just click to place. It'll give me little highlights, just like the tracking in AutoCAD, where, if I wanted things to intersect. It's also trimming those corners for me automatically so that as I get walls to meet each other, everything is meeting exactly how I want it to because it's a set of architectural plans and AutoCAD knows that it's architectural plans. So it knows that in those corners you want to have that nice clean corner, that you don't want to have it as some weird little overlap. Hit escape to just get completely out of the wall tool. And then the same thing like if I was adding in doors and windows. So if I'm adding in a door, I would just click on the door tool. I can choose different size doors. I could even load in even more doors. So if the door I want isn't there, I can find a door. Whoops, I just dropped my rings. I could find a door that I wanted to, load it in to my building, place it wherever I want it to be. I could flip it around if I want to flip it. And it's automatically going to just trim those lines up, put the symbols I want, escape to get out of it, escape again to just end doors entirely. And if I change my mind about, where I want this door placed or which way I want it facing, I could click on it and I could even just like alter in these dimensions. So let's say instead of 40 foot from the center of that wall, I wanted it 30 foot. I can just move it around. I could use the arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge it around. I can click on it to drag it over somewhere else. I could click on these arrows to switch it. And it's just going to automatically update not only in my floor plan, but in an elevation view and in a 3D view all at once, all simultaneously. If I want to add windows in, just like with doors, I can choose different types of windows, different sizes. I can even change some custom things here. So like my sill height, the dimensions of it itself, the dimensions of the trim. I could even go into editing the type and change every little material associated with it. So there's so much information built into that building or the structure itself in Revit that it just makes it, in my opinion, once you get the hang of it, so much easier to work and model with, that instead of focusing on those little details of like, oh, do I have all the materials of my wall lined up? Did I trim everything properly? It takes so much of that out that AutoCAD has, and now you're more free to really think about like the design aspect of it, of the human interaction part of it, because you're not thinking so much about making all the perfect line work and the perfect trims. But I can just place this window in here, and now I've got a window. And it again will give it the exact symbol that it's supposed to have for a double casement window. It puts in the exact window symbol I want. It puts like everything is just done for me. How cool is that? It's just so cool to me, guys. I don't know how you guys maybe you're at home freaking out too. I hope you are. I hope you are just going, whoa, that's poggers, as the kids say. Uh, and then just even more things. So if I wanted to add in components, this would be things like my furniture and stuff. So I could plop a desk in here. Uh, by default, there usually aren't many components. There's lots of trees here. But that's where this load family comes in, where I can look in my library and I can find different components of stuff. More so to find really interesting components, that's when I would be going to like Herman Miller's website to download their Revit families, or going to websites like Revit City to download things to put into my building. but we can load in lots of different things. Um, I always like in the entourage, or did they move them? Hmm. Usually in entourage, that's where they have little people that you can put in there. Did they move the people? I'll have to figure out where the people are. You could put a nice creepy little van, so I can open it. I could put a nice creepy van right outside. I could flip it around using the space bar, or I could just use some of my modify tools up here. Whoops, sorry. I hit the one number and the escape key on the same time, and so my Windows didn't like that. Um, and then even if I wanted to, look at my beautiful building in three-dimensionally, so I can go to the 3D, and here's my beautiful little building here with my nice thick CMU walls with gypsum wallboard and then bricks on the outside too. Let's say, I wanted, for some reason, I wanted the bricks on the inside. I could click on that wall and hit the space bar and flip it around, and now I've got that brick on the inside. How beautiful, how great. Typically, I wouldn't want it that way, but a lot of times students will accidentally put their walls inside out, and then they want to know how to flip them. And let's say while I'm looking at it three-dimensionally, I decide that I actually want this window to have a sill height of 5 feet for some reason. I can click on the window and I can change it to 5. And now my window is 5 feet up. Or I could look at it in the elevation. I don't know why I'm so zoomed out, but I'll just scroll to zoom in. And I could just move it. So I could say, oh, I want it down. And it updated here as well as here. I could place dimensions to move it around. There's lots of different ways you can do things in Revit. And one of the things I really love about it is none of them are permanent. So any changes you make in one view could get changed and could get updated later. And so again, because it's easier to make these altered alterations than compared to working with AutoCAD, and because everything is linked and syncs up all at once, it really kind of helps open up some of that more creative options and freedom than compared to working in AutoCAD. And it really helps you visualize everything a lot easier too, because it's that three-dimensional model. Similar to SketchUp, where SketchUp is that 3D model, but again, SketchUp didn't know what you were making. SketchUp just knew you were putting down shapes places. It didn't really know what you were putting down where. Revit knows that this is a building. It doesn't know what it's being used for, but it knows that it's a building, and it knows that when it comes to architectural standards, there are certain requirements that have to get followed. Other things too is like adding in floors and stairs and roofs we'll look at today, just as seeing how they function. Uh, so anytime we go into tools like that, we're going to get thrown into a new um, modify toolbar or boundary creating toolbar, in which we are going to be drawing some things in and then either canceling or accepting them. A lot of times when students go into the floor tool or the roof tool, they forget to check this little green check when they're done, and then they come back to the architecture tab and they'll usually email me freaking out saying that everything's grayed out and they can't do anything. And that's because currently right now I'm drawing a floor boundary and it won't let me do anything until I put this floor down. Um, I could, again, just like with my walls, just like with my windows, there are different types of floors that I could put in there, or I could make my own custom one. So I'm just going to put some wood flooring in there. And then we have all of our different ways I could draw a floor. One of my favorites being the default one of pick walls. And so what this does is I'm just going to click on all of the walls that I want surrounding my floor. Click OK, and I have a floor in there. Let me look at it 3D. Wowie wow, look at my floor. Isn't that just so cool? And I could even edit my floor too. And so let me just look at it from the top, or I could go into a level here. So I could edit my floor and I could change this boundary around. So if I just click on these lines and hit the delete key, I'm going to get an error code right now if I try to just say, okay, I'm done, because it's warning me we can't make this floor. It has to be a closed loop. And Revit is even showing me where my floor is currently open with these green dots. So it's saying, listen, we can't make this until you close it. And so then I can either draw a line in, or I could just click and drag that line over. And now I just have a floor in just this area instead of the whole thing. So if maybe I wanted to show different finishes in different rooms, I can apply different floors in different rooms. How cool and amazing is what you're saying to yourself, and I know you're right. The same thing then if I'm adding in things like a roof, I would click on the roof tool. Currently it's letting me know, hey, you want to make a roof, but we're currently on the first floor. Like, what level do you want to put this roof on? I could say, oh, that's great. Didn't think of that. I want to put it on level 2. And then again, I would have to draw in the boundary, or I could just select my walls that I want involved with it. I can say how much overhang I want the roof to have. I could say if I want certain sides sloping or not sloping, and I could always change those after the fact too. So I can just click on all of the walls I want. Currently my roof's on the inside of these walls, which is weird, not sure why. So I'm just going to click on those just to switch it out and over. And we'll click OK and we'll see the monstrosity that I made. I'm going to click on Don't Attach so we can see how horrific this is. So there's my roof sitting inside my walls. Few reasons why it came out this way. One is because I said don't attach the walls. But when I made these walls originally, I didn't give them any top constraint. I just said have them go up however far I want. And then my unconnected top constraint was at 20 feet. So I could say, oh crap, now I gotta go redo my walls. Or I can select my wall and I can change this top constraint of how tall I want my walls to be to say only go to level 2. And then it'll edit my wall and it'll shrink it down. And I can select more than one by holding the control key. I can select a bunch of them and say I want all of these to only go up to level 2. And now they're shorter. And even then I look at my roof and I say, I really don't like this roof. I can click on it and I can edit this roof. And I'm just going to, again, with my little 3D here, just look straight at the top. And let's say I want more overhang. So I could click on these lines. I can use my arrow keys to nudge them up and down. I could drag them. I could click on these little text boxes and change the exact amount of overhang. I could, after the fact, change their slopes too. So I could say like, actually, I don't want that one sloping. I want that roof to not have any slope. Or I could just highlight the whole thing, get rid of it, start my roof over again, and this time like say like, okay, I want to overhang on all of these 1 foot. And now it'll just automatically place all of these lines on the walls I pick 1 foot off, hit escape, and then I can even, whoops, click on like these again and say like, I actually don't want this one sloped, or this one, or this one. So like I can define these as I go, which is just so cool and crazy, and I could change them afterwards. And now let's see how beautiful it is. Oh, gorgeous. So fantastic. Let's say I really don't like the overall slope of this roof. I can click on these little arrowheads and I can drag it and change it. I can edit the footprint and I can click on the walls that I do have slope defined for. And I can change that slope, so I can click right here where I have a slope of 9/12, or I can change it here to say like, well, I actually just want this one to be 3/12. And then now I've got that smaller slope. So you can change and alter so many different things. Let's say I need these walls to come up to connect to here because I don't want this big empty abyss on top of my building. I can click on these walls, attach them to the roof. And don't worry, I am going to be doing a lot of this in those um, for next week in those guided practices that I said I'll be doing. So I'm not expecting you to memorize all of this just under this one time. But I just wanted you to kind of just see like just how fantastic Revit can be. Because even then, if I look at the elevation, well, now it's got everything in there. And if I delete this out of the elevation, when I go into the floor plan, it's gone in there too. So again, I don't have to worry about syncing all that stuff up. It's just so nifty, neat, and wonderful. Okay. And then the last thing I kind of just want to show you about Revit and how it works is then those sheets and kind of setting everything up within Paperspace. So in our project browser here, our sheets are located right here in the project browser. Currently in this template, there are no sheets. So I'll have to add some in. So I'm just going to right click on the word sheets and say I want a new one. I'll just load in a new size E sheet of paper, sure. Plop it in there. And then if I want to add my floor plans and stuff onto the sheet, I just drag them from the project browser in on the paper. And then I can click on it, and currently it's at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. I can change its scale, and now it's 1/4 inch equals a foot. I can move it around. I can alter parts or pieces about it. I can change where these signifiers are. How great, how wonderful. I'm going to put it back at 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to leave this floor plan here for now, just so I can show you how these can get filled in. Is I'm going to right click and make another new sheet. And now I have sheet 102, which is also unnamed, and don't worry, I'll change it. And I'm going to put an elevation in. So now I'm going to go for my elevations in my browser. I'm just going to drag and drop, and I'll put an elevation view on here. Because if I now go back, if I double click and go back to sheet 101, we can see here that it auto-populated that view 1 on sheet 102 is where I can find that south elevation. Furthermore, if I go to sheet 102, so if I slow double click on it, I can edit it. If I right click, rename, I can edit it. Or if I double click to go into it, I can also just change it in the title block here. So let's say I change this to be architectural sheet 201. Well, now it updated here to sheet 201. And if I right click on it and rename, and I name it to sheet A222222222, it updates there. So whatever I have in my project browser will just automatically get updated there. So if I'm drawing and making all of my plans and then I realize I don't like how the views are looking or how the sheets are set up and I want to alter which views are on what sheets, I don't have to worry about making sure I go back and change all of these signifiers. They'll update for me automatically. How cool, how great, how wonderful. I don't have to worry about naming my sheets or making sure rather that I update the names of my sheets because everything is going to be synced for me. I still am going to have to go and manually say like this is sheet 101, this is sheet 102, these are the elevation sheets, these are the floor plan sheets. These are the section sheets. I still have to do those myself. However, it is just a lot easier than working with AutoCAD and things like that. And when it comes to the title block too, we can have custom ones that we make. There are templates that you can load in. You can make your own template. And so most firms will have their own title block template that will just kind of, you can just pre-use and everything. And with that, I don't want to get too much into Revit today, but I am kind of excited to show it to you guys. Usually when we do the Revit part, um, students tend to be like, why couldn't we do this to begin with? And that's because Revit still is kind of a new-ish software. It's definitely way more popular now than it was probably, especially if I'm thinking back to when I was, most of you guys are either like freshman or sophomore, or even when you were seniors in college. Um, so when I was first in college, Revit was not something that really anybody used because it was still a fairly new software out there. It really didn't start gaining big traction and heavy usage until probably around 2008, 2009. And because of that, because it's still not really a commonly used software, many firms don't use it. Um, that's changing now, but for a while it was still they were using just AutoCAD. So the firm, if I compare things for what my brother does at his job as an architect, his firm, they still only use AutoCAD. But that's really because if you went to college for architecture or interior design in, like the 90s or even the very early 2000s, and you didn't learn this software, chances are you are not going to then go out of your way to learn it on your own. Um, so because my brother was in this situation where he at least got a taste of Revit and a taste of BIM when he was in college, he's one of the few people at his workspace that actually kind of knows how to use the software. Um, and uh, in some ways that's good, in some ways that's bad. Uh, I think now there's really a much more high demand for people who have Revit skills because businesses are starting to see just how much faster they can push drawings out with Revit than compared to AutoCAD. They see all of the different analysis, especially when it comes to energy usage and sustainability that you can do when it comes to Revit, because you can even plop your building directly down on a particular site, and I can, I'll just say continue with current settings. Um, and so I could see like what, or I can even come in here, go into the sun settings for like a single day at a particular location. I can type in an address or a latitude and longitude, and I could find any particular day. Whoops. Sure. I'm not sure what that is, but okay. So whoops, I forgot I was in caps lock. Drive, Boone, North Carolina. Search. Maybe not. Oh well. Do I have to put the whole thing? I didn't even get to finish typing. Uh, Maybe I have to figure that out. It could be because I'm on a school computer too. Yes, continue running. Oh, okay. Well, you'll have to take my word for it that you can search for specific locations. You can put it down at that location. You can figure out for a single day or for an entire year even what the path of the sun would look like and how like the shadows of the trees would be affecting it based on where the sun was at any given time on any given day. Which you can't do in AutoCAD. Um, And so having those Revit skills is going to make you very valuable at a company as it becomes more prevalent. There are some other softwares out there that we could teach you too, um, but with only one semester to teach three different softwares, adding on a fourth would probably be a little bit too much. And so I'll shut up now as promised, and I am looking forward to doing some really cool stuff with you in Revit. And this is where we'll spend the remainder of the course. So I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.